Liora's povey. The rope bit into my wrists like teeth. Cold. Everything was cold. The kind of cold that didn't just freeze your skin. It crawled inside your bones and made a home there. My breath came out in shattered clouds, and the snow beneath my knees had already soaked through my thin dress, turning my legs numb. I could still hear my father's footsteps crunching away through the snow. He hadn't looked back. Not once. "Da," I had whispered, my voice barely a sound against the howling wind. "Da, please." But he kept walking, his shoulders hunched, his head bowed, like a man walking away from his own grave. Maybe he was. Maybe I was the grave. The ancient oak behind me groaned under the weight of ice and wind. My arms were pulled back around its massive trunk, wrists bound so tightly, I could feel my pulse throbbing against the coarse rope. The village elders had tied the knots themselves. Elder Cormac had whispered a prayer under his breath as he did it, something in the old tongue, something that sounded like an apology, but he tied them anyway. They all did, because the beast had been seen again. 3 nights ago, old Moira's sheep had been torn apart, not eaten, just destroyed, scattered across the frozen field like broken dolls. 2 nights ago, the Kilbride boy went missing. They found his scarf half a mile into the blackthorn forest, shredded and soaked in blood. And last night, someone, or something, had carved claw marks into the side of the village kirk. Deep gouges, 4 parallel lines, each as thick as a man's finger. The village was terrified, and my father had looked at me that morning with eyes I didn't recognize, eyes that had already made a decision. "You'll save us all, Liora," he'd said quietly, his voice hollow. "The beast wants a sacrifice. The elders say it's the only way. But why me?" I'd choked out, tears already burning in my throat. "Why your own daughter?" He didn't answer. He just looked away. Before we begin this journey into one of Scotland's darkest and most emotional stories of fate and rebirth, I need to ask you something. Where are you watching from? Drop your location in the comments. And if this is your first time on our channel, subscribe now, because what you're about to hear is a story that legends tried to hide, but memory refused to forget. Now, hours later, I was alone. The wind screamed through the trees, and the forest around me was a wall of black and white, snow-covered pines and skeletal branches clawing at the sky. The moon was hidden behind thick clouds, and the only light came from the faint glow of the village lanterns far below, dots of gold against the dark hillside. They were waiting, watching, to see if the beast would come, to see if their sacrifice would be enough. My chest ached, not from the cold, but from something deeper, something that had been breaking inside me for years. I was 22 years old, and I had never been wanted, not by my mother, who died bringing me into this world, not by my father, who looked at me and saw only the woman he'd lost, not by the village, who whispered that I was cursed, that my birth had stolen the life of the kindest woman in the Highlands, not even by the goddess, it seemed, because I had no wolf. In a land where every soul was born with a beast inside them, I was empty, hollow, human, a wolfless disgrace in a world that worshipped the moon. And now I was bait. My teeth chattered. My fingers had gone numb an hour ago. I could barely feel my legs anymore. This is how I die, I thought distantly. Frozen, alone, unloved. And then I heard it, a sound. Low, guttural, not quite a growl, not quite a breath. It came from the darkness beyond the trees. My heart slammed against my ribs. "No," I whispered. "No, no, no." The sound came again, closer, and then movement. A shadow peeled itself away from the blackness of the forest. Huge, impossibly huge. It moved on 4 legs, but its shape was wrong. Too tall, too broad, muscles rippling beneath fur that looked like it had been dipped in midnight. Its eyes glowed, not yellow, not gold, silver, like moonlight trapped in glass. It stepped into the clearing, and the snow beneath its paws hissed and melted. Steam rose from its body as if it burned from the inside. Its fur was black as a starless sky, and its muzzle was stained with something dark. Blood, maybe, or ash. It was the most terrifying thing I had ever seen, and it was looking right at me. I couldn't breathe, couldn't move, couldn't scream. The beast took another step forward, then another. Its massive head lowered, and I could hear the sound of its breathing. Deep, deliberate, controlled. Not the breathing of a mindless animal. The breathing of something that thought. It stopped 3 feet away from me. I was shaking so hard I thought my bones would shatter. And then, it spoke. Not with words, not with sound, but I heard it anyway. A voice, deep, ancient, and impossibly gentle, echoed inside my mind. "Luna," I gasped. The beast tilted its head, and those silver eyes softened. "You are not meant to die here, little Luna." My mouth opened, but no sound came out. The creature stepped closer, and I felt heat radiating from its body, warmth that made my frozen skin tingle and burn. It lowered its muzzle to my face, and I felt its breath against my cheek. Warm, steady, alive. "Do not be afraid," the voice said. "I have been waiting for you." And then, with a single swipe of its massive claw, the ropes fell away. Liora's povey collapsed forward into the snow, my arms screaming as blood rushed back into my wrists. My whole body was shaking. Cold, fear, shock. I didn't know anymore. I couldn't think, couldn't process. The beast had just freed me. I pressed my palms into the frozen ground and forced myself to look up. It was still there, watching me, those silver eyes unblinking, glowing softly in the darkness. "What?" My voice cracked. "What are you?" The creature didn't move, but the voice returned, calm, steady, impossibly gentle. "I am what your people have forgotten. And you, little Luna, are what they tried to erase." "I don't understand," I whispered, my throat tight. "I'm nobody. I'm nothing. I don't even have a wolf." "You do." The words hit me like a blow. I shook my head, tears burning in my eyes. "No, I don't. I've never shifted. I've never felt her. The healers said I was broken. You were bound." Silence. The wind howled through the trees, but I barely heard it. My heart was pounding so hard I thought it would burst. "Bound?" I repeated. "What does that mean?" The beast lowered itself onto its haunches, sitting like a wolf might sit, but even seated, it was enormous, its head level with mine. "Your wolf was sealed before you were born. A dark magic. Old magic. Someone feared what you would become." I stared at it, my mind spinning. "Who?" I demanded, my voice breaking. "Who would do that to me?" The beast's eyes flickered, something like sorrow passing through them. "The one who should have protected you most." My stomach dropped. "My father?" The creature didn't answer, but the silence was answer enough. A sob tore out of me. I pressed my hands over my mouth, trying to hold it in, but it came anyway, raw and broken, and full of a pain I'd been carrying my whole life. "He knew," I choked out. "He knew I had a wolf, and he took her from me. He was afraid." "Of what?" I screamed, my voice echoing through the forest. "What could I possibly be that would make him do this to me?" The beast rose to its feet, and for a moment I thought it would leave, but instead it stepped closer, so close I could feel the heat of its body, the raw power radiating from it. "You are the last daughter of the Mooncaller bloodline, the true Luna of the Highland packs, and your wolf is not like theirs." I didn't understand. I wanted to, but my mind was too full of betrayal and grief and a lifetime of being told I was worthless. "Then why?" I looked up at it, tears streaming down my face. "Why did you come for me? Why not let me die?" The beast leaned down, and I felt its muzzle brush against my forehead. Gentle, reverent, impossibly tender. "Because you called me, Luna. You have been calling me since the day you were born." Kale's povey had been human once, a long time ago. So long that I barely remembered what it felt like to walk on two legs, to speak with a voice that wasn't a growl, to touch something without claws. But I remembered her. Even before I saw her face, I remembered her. The pull had been there for decades, faint at first, like a whisper at the edge of a dream. But as the years passed, it grew stronger, louder, until it was a roar inside my mind that drowned out everything else. Find her, protect her, bring her home. I didn't know who she was. I didn't know her name, but I knew she was mine. When they tied her to that tree, I felt it like a blade through my chest. Her fear, her pain, her resignation. She thought she was going to die, and I would have torn that village apart if they'd let her. But I didn't, because she wasn't ready. Not yet. Instead, I came for her in the only form I had left, the beast, the monster, the thing they feared. And when I saw her, gods, when I saw her, everything inside me went still. She was small, fragile. Her dark hair was tangled with snow, her lips blue from cold, her body shaking so hard I thought she'd break. But her eyes were silver, just like mine. She didn't know what she was, didn't know what she carried inside her. But I did, and I would make sure she survived long enough to find out. Even if it meant she hated me, even if it meant she feared me, I would keep her alive, because she was my Luna. and I had been waiting for her for 100 years. Liora's POV. The beast didn't let me walk. The moment I tried to stand, my legs buckled beneath me. My body was too cold, too weak, too broken. Before I could hit the ground, the creature moved, faster than something that size should be able to move. It caught me with its massive head, nudging me gently upright. And then, it lowered itself onto its belly. Climb on. I stared at it in disbelief. You want me to ride you? You will freeze if you walk, and I will not let you die. There was no room for argument in that voice. It was a command, but not a cruel one. A promise. With trembling hands, I reached out and gripped the thick fur at its shoulders. It was softer than I expected, warm, almost hot to the touch. I pulled myself up onto its back, my frozen fingers tangling in its fur, and the moment I settled against it, heat flooded through me. It felt like being wrapped in a living fire. The beast rose smoothly to its feet, and I gasped, clutching tighter. It was so tall, taller than any wolf I'd ever seen, taller than a horse. Hold on, Luna. And then it ran. The world became a blur of white and black. Trees flew past us in streaks of shadow. The wind howled in my ears, but I didn't feel cold anymore. The beast's body was a furnace beneath me, and its movements were so smooth, so fluid, that I barely had to hold on. We ran for what felt like hours, deeper into the blackthorn forest, farther from the village, farther from everything I'd ever known. And then we stopped. I blinked, disoriented, and looked around. We were standing in front of a cave, not a small one. The entrance was massive, easily twice the height of a man, carved into the side of a steep cliff that jutted up from the forest floor. Ancient runes were etched into the stone around the opening, glowing faintly with a pale blue light. "This is my home," the beast said quietly. "You will be safe here." It lowered itself again, and I slid off its back, my legs shaking. The ground beneath my feet was solid stone, covered in a thin layer of frost. The air here was different, charged somehow, like the space between a lightning strike and thunder. I turned to look at the beast, and for the first time I saw it clearly in the moonlight. It was beautiful. Terrifying, yes, but beautiful. Its fur gleamed like polished obsidian, and its eyes, those silver eyes, held an intelligence that made my chest ache. "What do I call you?" I asked softly. The beast's ears flicked forward. "I have not been called by name in a very long time, but you had one once?" A pause. Then, "Kale, Kale," I repeated, and something about the name felt right, familiar, even though I'd never heard it before. The beast, Kale, turned and walked toward the cave entrance. "Come, Luna. You need warmth, food, rest." I hesitated for only a moment. Then I followed him into the dark. Inside, the cave was nothing like I expected. It wasn't cold or damp or filled with bones. It was warm. A fire burned in the center of a wide stone chamber, its flames casting dancing shadows on the walls. Furs were piled in one corner, thick, soft, clean. Shelves carved into the rock held jars of herbs, dried meat, clay bowls. It looked lived in, cared for, human. "You did all this?" I asked, turning to Kale. He didn't answer with words. Instead, his form began to shimmer, like heat rising from stone. And then, he shifted. I stumbled backward, my heart racing, as the massive beast's body twisted and reformed. Fur receded, limbs shortened and reshaped. The glow in his eyes dimmed, but didn't fade. And then he was standing there, a man, tall, broad-shouldered. His skin was tan and scarred, his hair black and wild, falling to his shoulders. He wore only a pair of rough leather trousers, and his chest was bare, muscled and marked with old claw marks that looked like they'd been carved into him deliberately. But it was his eyes that held me frozen. Silver, just like before. He looked at me, and for the first time, I saw emotion flicker across his face. "Guilt. I'm sorry," he said quietly, his voice deep and rough. "I didn't mean to frighten you." I couldn't speak, because standing there, human and vulnerable and impossibly beautiful, he looked like he was in pain. What has Liora's father done to her? And why does this beast seem to know more about her past than she does? Liora's POV. He didn't move toward me. Didn't try to touch me. He just stood there, watching me with those silver eyes that seemed to see straight through me. I tried to find words, but they wouldn't come. "You're not just a beast." "No," Kyle said quietly. "I'm not." "Then what are you?" He turned away from me, moving toward the fire. The flames reflected off the scars on his back. Hundreds of them, layered over each other like a map of suffering. I was an alpha once, he said. A long time ago, before the curse. Before I became this cursed, I whispered. He nodded slowly. By a witch I once trusted. She bound me to this form, half man, half beast, and condemned me to wander these forests until... He stopped. Until what? I pressed. He turned to look at me, and the weight in his gaze made my breath catch. Until I found you. Silence filled the cave, broken only by the crackling of the fire. Me? I said, my voice barely audible. What do I have to do with your curse? Kale's jaw tightened. Everything. You are the key to breaking it. But more than that, he took a slow breath. You are my mate, Liora. My fated one. I have been waiting for you for over a century. The world tilted. I staggered backward, my hand finding the stone wall to steady myself. No, I said, shaking my head. That's not possible. I don't have a wolf. I can't be anyone's mate. You do have a wolf, Kale said firmly, stepping toward me. She's there, locked away, hidden behind a seal so strong that even the moon goddess herself would struggle to break it. Tears burned in my eyes. My father did this to me. It wasn't a question anymore. It was a truth I'd been trying not to believe. Kale's expression softened with something like grief. Yes. Why? The word came out broken. Why would he do this? Because he was afraid of what you would become, Kale said gently. Your bloodline, the Mooncallers. They were the first Lunas, the ones chosen by the moon goddess to lead all packs. Your wolf isn't like theirs, Liora. She's pure, ancient, powerful. Then why would my own father seal her away? Because your mother died bringing you into this world, Kale said quietly. And in his grief, he believed you were cursed. The elders convinced him that your power would destroy the packs, that you were a threat to their control. I pressed my hands over my face, trying to hold myself together. So he made me nothing, I whispered. He made me weak, worthless, ashamed to carry for my entire life. You were never worthless, Kale said, his voice rough with emotion. You were feared. I looked up at him, tears streaming down my face. If you're my mate, I said, my voice shaking, then where were you? Where were you when I was alone? When I was hated? When they tied me to that tree to die? Pain flashed across his face, raw and devastating. I was trapped, he said hoarsely. The curse wouldn't let me leave these forests. I could feel you, every moment of your pain, your fear, but I couldn't reach you. Not until they brought you here. Not until they gave you to me. They didn't give me to you, I said bitterly. They threw me away. I know, his voice broke. And I swear to you, Liora, I will make them answer for it. Kale's POV. She looked so small standing there, so broken, and I had done nothing to stop it. For 22 years, I had felt her through the bond, faint, suppressed, but there, her loneliness, her pain, the way she ached for something she couldn't name. She'd been calling for me her entire life, and I hadn't been able to answer. The curse had kept me bound to these woods, unable to leave, unable to shift fully into human form for more than a few hours at a time. I'd watched the village from the shadows, seen her walking through the streets with her head down, her shoulders hunched, trying to make herself invisible. I'd wanted to tear down their walls, burn their homes, show them what happened when they hurt what was mine. But I couldn't. Not yet. Not until she was ready. You need to eat, I said quietly, moving toward the shelves. And rest. You're still half frozen. I'm not hungry, she said, her voice hollow. You will be. I pulled down a clay bowl and filled it with stew I'd made that morning. Venison, root vegetables, herbs. Simple, but warm. I brought it to her and held it out. She stared at it for a long moment. Then, slowly, she took it. Our fingers brushed, and the bond flared between us, hot and electric and undeniable. She gasped, nearly dropping the bowl. I steadied it with my hand, my heart pounding. You feel it? I said softly. She nodded, her eyes wide. What is it? The mate bond, I said. It's been there since the moment you were born, waiting, but I didn't feel it before, because your wolf was sealed. But now that you're near me, now that the bond is waking, you'll start to feel her stirring. She looked down at the bowl in her hands, her expression unreadable. I don't know if I want this, she whispered. The words cut deeper than any blade, but I understood. I won't force you, I said quietly. You don't have to accept me. You don't have to stay. But I will keep you safe. I will help you break the seal, and I will make sure you never feel powerless again. She looked up at me, tears shining in her silver eyes. Why? She asked. Why do you care so much? I reached out slowly, carefully. and brushed a strand of dark hair away from her face. "Because you are mine, Liora," I said, my voice rough, "and I am yours, and I would burn this world to ash before I let anyone hurt you again." Liora is trapped between the life that broke her and a fate she doesn't understand, but the bond is waking, and so is something buried deep inside her. Liora's povey didn't sleep that night. I tried. Kale had given me the pile of furs in the corner of the cave, and they were soft and warm and smelled like pine and smoke, but every time I closed my eyes, I saw my father's face, heard his voice. "You'll save us all, Liora." He'd lied. He hadn't been trying to save anyone. He'd been trying to get rid of me. I sat up, pulling one of the furs around my shoulders, and looked across the cave. Kale was sitting by the fire, his back to me, staring into the flames. He hadn't shifted back into his beast form. He'd stayed human, for me, I realized, so I wouldn't be afraid. "You don't have to stay awake," I said quietly. He glanced over his shoulder, his silver eyes reflecting the firelight. "Neither do you. I can't stop thinking." He turned to face me fully, resting his forearms on his knees. "About what?" "Everything." I pulled my knees up to my chest. "About my father. About the seal. About you." His expression softened. "What about me? You said you've been waiting for me for 100 years. I have, but you didn't know who I was. You didn't know my name. How could you be so sure I was your mate?" Kyle was quiet for a moment. Then he said, "I felt you, through the bond. Even before you were born, I felt your soul reaching for mine." My throat tightened. "That sounds like a fairy tale. It's the truth." He stood and crossed the cave toward me, moving slowly, carefully. He stopped a few feet away. "May I sit?" I nodded. He lowered himself onto the stone floor beside me, close enough that I could feel the warmth radiating from his body. He smelled like earth and rain and something wild I couldn't name. "When the witch cursed me," he said quietly, "she told me I would never be free until I found my mate. But she also told me that my mate would be the one person in the world who could destroy me." I looked at him sharply. "Destroy you?" He nodded. "If you reject the bond, if you choose to walk away, the curse will kill me, slowly, painfully." My stomach twisted. "So, you need me to survive?" "Yes." "Then this isn't really a choice, is it?" I said bitterly. "You're asking me to save you, just like my father asked me to save the village." Kale's jaw tightened. "No, I'm telling you the truth so you can make your own choice. If you want to leave, I will take you somewhere safe. I will make sure you're protected. And I will die knowing you're free." Tears burned in my eyes. "Why would you do that?" "Because I love you," he said simply. "I have loved you since before I knew your face, and I will not trap you the way your father did." I stared at him, my heart pounding. "You don't even know me," I whispered. "I know your soul," he said, "and that's enough." Before I could respond, the fire flared, bright and sudden and impossibly hot. I gasped, scrambling backward, and Kale was on his feet in an instant, his body tense, his eyes glowing. The flames twisted and rose, forming a shape, a woman. She was made of light and fire, and something that felt older than the world itself. Her hair flowed like liquid silver, and her eyes, gods, her eyes, were the same color as mine, the same color as Kale's. "Liora Mooncaller," the woman said, her voice echoing through the cave like a bell. "Daughter of the lost bloodline. It is time." I couldn't move, couldn't breathe. Kale dropped to one knee, his head bowed. My goddess, the moon goddess, she was here. She turned her glowing gaze to me, and I felt it like a weight pressing down on my chest. "You have suffered much, child," she said gently. "You have been broken by those who should have loved you, but you are not weak. You are not worthless. You are my chosen Luna, and it is time for you to awaken." "I don't understand," I whispered, my voice shaking. "The seal on your wolf was not meant to protect you," the goddess said. "It was meant to control you, to keep you powerless. But I will break it, if you are willing to accept what comes next." "What comes next?" I asked. Her expression grew solemn. "Pain, transformation, a rebirth of fire and blood. You will face the darkness inside yourself, and you will either emerge as the Luna you were meant to be, or you will be consumed." My hands were trembling. "And if I refuse, then you will remain as you are, wolfless, bound, safe, safe." The word tasted like ash in my mouth. I looked at Kale. He was still kneeling, his head bowed, but his hands were clenched into fists. He was afraid. Not for himself, for me. I turned back to the goddess. I accept, I said, my voice stronger than I felt. Her smile was sad and proud all at once. Then come, child, she said, holding out her hand. Let me show you who you truly are. I stood on shaking legs and reached for her. The moment our fingers touched, the world exploded into light. Kale's Povey watched her body go rigid, her eyes rolling back, her mouth opening in a silent scream, and I couldn't do anything. The goddess had warned me, told me that this was Liora's trial to face, that I couldn't interfere, but every instinct I had was roaring at me to grab her, to pull her away, to stop whatever was happening. Her body began to glow, silver light pouring from her skin, her hair lifting as if caught in an invisible wind, and then she collapsed. I lunged forward, catching her before she hit the ground. Liora, I shouted, cradling her against my chest. Liora, please. The goddess's voice was gentle but firm. She has not lost Kyle. She is being remade. You must trust her. I do trust her, I said hoarsely. But I can't lose her. Not now. You will not lose her, the goddess said. But you must be patient. She will return to you when she is ready. And then the light consumed her completely, and she was gone. Liora has entered the goddess's realm, but what she finds there will either forge her into a Luna of legend or break her beyond repair. Liora's Povey woke in a place that wasn't a place. The ground beneath me was soft, like clouds or mist, and the sky above was endless, silver, glowing, alive. I sat up slowly, my head spinning, and looked around. I was alone. No, not alone. A wolf sat in front of me. She was massive, easily as large as Kale's beast form, but where his fur was black, hers was pure white. Her eyes were the same silver as mine, and when she looked at me, I felt something inside my chest pull, like a string being tugged, like a missing piece clicking into place. You, I whispered. The wolf tilted her head. Hello, Liora. Her voice was inside my mind. Warm, steady, familiar. You're my wolf? I am. I have always been here, waiting for you to find me. Tears spilled down my cheeks. They took you from me. They tried, but they could not erase me, only hide me. I reached out with a trembling hand, and she stepped forward, pressing her muzzle into my palm. Her fur was soft and warm, and the moment I touched her, I felt it. Power. Raw. Ancient. Overwhelming. It flooded through me like a river breaking through a dam, and I gasped, my whole body trembling. What is this? This is who you are, Liora. This is what they feared. Images flashed through my mind, memories that weren't mine, women with silver eyes, standing under the full moon, wolves bowing before them, packs united under their rule. The Mooncallers, my bloodline, they were powerful, I whispered. They were everything. Healers, warriors, leaders, the moon goddesses chosen, and you are the last of them. But I don't know how to be that, I said desperately. I don't know how to lead. I don't know how to fight. I'm just... You are enough, she said firmly. You have always been enough. Now stop doubting yourself, and let me in. Let you in? We are one, Liora. We always have been. But you must accept me fully. You must merge with me. Only then will the seal break. I looked at her, this beautiful, powerful creature who had been locked away for my entire life. Will it hurt? I asked quietly. Yes, but you are strong enough to survive it. I took a deep breath. Then I nodded. Okay, I whispered. I'm ready. The wolf's eyes glowed brighter. Then let us become whole. She stepped forward and dissolved into light. The light slammed into my chest, and I screamed. It felt like being torn apart and put back together at the same time. Every nerve in my body was on fire. My bones cracked and reformed. My skin burned and healed. And through it all, I could feel her, my wolf, settling into place inside me. Not as a separate being, but as a part of me. We are one. The pain reached a crescendo, and then it stopped. I gasped, falling to my hands and knees, my whole body shaking. But I wasn't weak. I was strong. I looked down at my hands and saw claws, white fur, power thrumming beneath my skin. I had shifted. For the first time in my life, I had shifted. A sob of relief tore out of me, and I collapsed onto the ground, laughing and crying at the same time. You are beautiful, Liora, my wolf said gently, and you are free. The goddess appeared then, her form shimmering into existence beside me. Well done, child, she said softly. You have reclaimed what was stolen from you. I shifted back into my human form, and she helped me to my feet. What happens now? I asked, my voice hoarse. Now, the goddess said, you return to the mortal realm. You face those who wronged you, and you decide what kind of Luna you will be. I don't want revenge, I said quietly. I know, she smiled. That is why you will be a great Luna, because you understand that true strength is not found in violence, but in mercy. She reached out and touched my forehead, and warmth flooded through me. Go, Liora Mooncaller, she said. Your mate is waiting for you. Kale's povit had been 3 days. 3 days since the goddess had taken her. 3 days since I'd held her in my arms and watched her disappear into light. I hadn't slept, hadn't eaten. I just sat by the fire and waited and prayed, and then the air shimmered. I was on my feet in an instant, my heart pounding. Light poured into the cave, and a figure stepped through. Liora, but different. Her hair was longer, flowing down her back like a river of dark silk. Her eyes glowed faintly silver, and her presence, God's, her presence, filled the entire cave. She looked like a queen. She looked like a goddess. She looked at me, and a slow smile spread across her face. Hello, Kale, she said softly. I crossed the cave in 3 strides and pulled her into my arms, burying my face in her hair. You came back, I said hoarsely. You came back to me. I told you I would, she said, her voice muffled against my chest. I pulled back just enough to look at her, cupping her face in my hands. You're beautiful, I whispered. She laughed, a real, genuine laugh. I'm the same person. No, I said, shaking my head. You're everything you were always meant to be. Her eyes softened, and she reached up to cover my hands with hers. I'm ready, Kyle, she said quietly. I'm ready to go back. I'm ready to face them. I nodded, my chest tight with pride and love, and a fierce protectiveness I couldn't name. Then let's go, I said. Let's show them what happens when they underestimate a Luna. Liora has awakened, but the pack that cast her out has no idea what's coming. Leora's POV. We didn't go to the village. Not yet. First, Kale took me deeper into the forest, to a place he called the Elder's Grove. It was a clearing surrounded by ancient stone pillars, each one carved with runes that glowed faintly in the moonlight. The air here was different, charged with old magic, thick with memory. This is where the first alphas made their pacts with the moon goddess, Kale said quietly. This is where the Highland packs were born. I stepped into the center of the clearing, and the moment my feet touched the ground I felt it, a pulse of power, recognition. The stones began to glow brighter, and I heard voices, whispers in a language I didn't know but somehow understood. Welcome home, Luna. The packs await your return. Reclaim what was stolen. I looked at Kale, my eyes wide. They know I'm here, he nodded, his expression grim. The stones are connected to every pack in the Highlands. The alphas will feel it. They'll know a Luna has awakened. Will they come? Some will. Others. His jaw tightened. Others will see you as a threat. I took a slow breath, steadying myself. Then we'll deal with them, I said firmly. Kale's eyes flashed with pride. You sound like a queen. I am a queen, I said, surprising myself with the certainty in my voice, and it's time they remembered what that means. We reached the edge of the village at dawn. Kale had shifted into his beast form, and I rode on his back, no longer a terrified girl being carried to safety, but a Luna returning to claim her place. The village looked the same as it had 4 days ago. The same stone cottages, the same narrow streets, the same church with claw marks gouged into its side. But everything felt different, because I was different. Kale stopped at the edge of the square, and I slid off his back, landing lightly on my feet. People were already gathering, drawn by the sound of his approach, their faces pale with fear. Elder Cormag stepped forward, his eyes wide. The beast is not your enemy, I said, my voice cutting through the morning air like a blade. Every head turned toward me. I stepped into the light, and I heard the gasps, the whispers. Liora? She's alive. How is that possible? Her eyes. I walked forward slowly, deliberately, Kale at my side. His presence was a wall of heat and power beside me, and I felt the bond between us humming like a live wire. Elder Cormag stared at me, his face ashen. You survived. I did, I said calmly. No thanks to you. You thought I would die, I finished. You tied me to a tree and left me to freeze. You sacrificed me to save yourselves. Shame flickered across his face, but he didn't deny it. Where is my father? I asked, my voice cold. Silence. Then a figure stepped out from the crowd. My father. He looked older than I remembered, smaller. His shoulders were hunched, his face lined with exhaustion and guilt. Our eyes met, and I saw it. He knew. He knew what he'd done. "Liora," he said hoarsely. Don't," I said, holding up a hand. "Don't apologize. Don't explain. I already know the truth." His face crumpled. "I thought I was protecting you." "You were protecting yourself," I said flatly. "You sealed my wolf because you were afraid of what I would become. You let them tie me to that tree because it was easier than admitting you'd failed me." Tears streamed down his face. "I'm sorry. I know," I said quietly. "But your apology doesn't change what you did." I turned to face the gathered villagers. "You cast me out because you thought I was weak," I said, my voice ringing across the square. "You thought I was cursed, a burden, a sacrifice worth making." No one spoke. "But I am not weak," I continued. "I am Aluna, the last daughter of the Mooncaller bloodline, and I have returned, not to punish you, but to offer you a choice." Elder Cormag swallowed hard. "What choice?" "You can continue living in fear," I said, "clinging to old traditions that tell you to sacrifice the innocent to save yourselves. Or you can change. You can rebuild. You can become a pack worthy of the moon goddess's blessing." "And if we refuse?" one of the younger men asked, his voice trembling. I looked at Kyle, and he growled, low and dangerous. "Then you will answer to him," I said simply. "And trust me, you do not want that." The silence that followed was deafening. Finally, Elder Cormag dropped to one knee. "We accept, Luna," he said, his voice shaking. "We will follow you." One by one, the others knelt, all except my father. He stood there, tears streaming down his face, looking at me like I was a stranger. "I don't expect you to forgive me," he said quietly. "I don't know if I can," I admitted. "But I won't let hatred consume me the way fear consumed you." He nodded, his face breaking. And then he knelt, Kale's POV. She was magnificent, standing there in the center of the village square, the morning sun catching in her dark hair, her silver eyes glowing with power and purpose. She was everything I'd known she would be, everything I'd waited a century to see. And the bond between us, gods, the bond was singing. I could feel her strength, her resolve, her mercy. She was going to change everything, and I would stand beside her every step of the way. The village has knelt, but the other Highland packs are coming, and not all of them will be pleased to see Aluna rise. Kale's POV. The gathering was called 3 days later. Every alpha in the Highlands had felt the awakening, the pulse of power from the Elder's Grove. And now they were coming to see for themselves if the legends were true, if Aluna had truly returned. I stood at the edge of the grove, watching the pack leaders arrive. They came with their warriors, their betas, their suspicion and their pride. 12 packs, 12 alphas, and every single one of them radiated dominance and challenge. This was going to be a fight, not with claws or teeth, not yet, but with words, with politics, with the kind of power games I'd spent a century avoiding. But Liora needed me, so I would endure it. She stood in the center of the grove, dressed in a simple gown the village women had made for her, white linen embroidered with silver thread. Her hair was braided back from her face, and her eyes glowed softly in the fading light. She looked like a queen. She looked like a warrior. She looked like she belonged here. The first alpha to approach was Roderick of the Ashenfell pack, a massive brute of a man with a scarred face and a reputation for cruelty. He stopped a few feet away from her, his eyes narrowing. "So," he said, his voice a rumble, "you're the Luna." "I am," Liora said calmly. "You don't look like much," he said dismissively. I growled, low and dangerous, and took a step forward. Liora held up a hand, stopping me. "Kale," she said softly, "let him speak." I forced myself to stop, but my eyes never left Roderick. If he touched her, I would tear him apart. Liora turned back to the alpha, her expression serene. "You're right. I don't look like much. I'm small, young, inexperienced." Roderick smirked. "But," Liora continued, her voice hardening, "I am the last daughter of the Mooncaller bloodline. I carry the blessing of the moon goddess herself, and I have survived more in 22 years than you will in your entire life." The smirk faded. "So if you've come here to challenge me," Liora said, her eyes flashing silver, "then do it. But know this, I am not afraid of you, and I will not be intimidated." Silence. Then Roderick laughed, a short, sharp bark of sound. "You've got fire," he said, nodding slowly. "I'll give you that." He took a step back and dipped his head. Not a full bow, but an acknowledgement. Ashenfell recognizes you, Luna. Relief flooded through me, but I didn't let it show. 1 down, 11 to go. The next few alphas were easier. Some were curious. Some were respectful. A few were wary but willing to listen. But then came Marin of the Bloodstone Pack. She was tall and elegant, with pale hair and cold blue eyes. Her reputation preceded her. She was ruthless, ambitious, and had no love for the old ways. "A Luna," she said, her voice dripping with disdain. "How quaint." Liora didn't flinch. "Alpha Marin, it's an honor to meet you." "Don't patronize me, girl," Marin snapped. "I know what you are. A relic, a symbol of a time when women ruled packs through bloodline alone, rather than strength. And you think that's weakness?" Liora asked quietly. "I think it's outdated," Marin said. "The world has changed. We don't need Lunas anymore. We need strong alphas who can lead through power, not birthright." "Then challenge me," Liora said calmly. Marin's eyes narrowed. "What? If you think I'm weak?" Liora said. "Then challenge me. Right here. Right now." The clearing went silent. I tensed. Every muscle in my body coiled to move. If Marin attacked her— "Liora," I said warningly. "I can handle this, Kale," she said without looking at me. Marin studied her for a long moment. Then she smiled, cold and sharp. "Interesting," she said. "Very interesting. But I don't waste my time on challenges I know I'll win." "Then you accept me as Luna?" Liora pressed. Marin's smile widened. "For now. But know this, little Luna. If you prove to be as weak as I think you are, I will take your place. And there won't be anything your beast can do to stop me." She turned and walked away, her warriors falling in behind her. I moved to Leora's side, my jaw tight. "She's going to be a problem." "I know," Liora said quietly, "but we'll deal with her when the time comes." By the end of the night, 10 of the 12 packs had acknowledged her. Only 2 remained undecided, and one of them was the most powerful pack in the Highlands, the Stormridge pack. Their alpha hadn't come to the gathering, and that was a problem. Leora's POV. That night, I couldn't sleep. I lay in Kale's cave, wrapped in furs, staring at the fire. The gathering had gone better than I'd expected. Most of the alphas had accepted me, some grudgingly, some respectfully, but they'd accepted me. But Marin's words echoed in my mind. "If you prove to be as weak as I think you are, I will take your place." I wasn't afraid of her, but I was afraid of failing, of proving that I wasn't strong enough to be what they needed. "You're thinking too loud." I turned to see Kale sitting up, his silver eyes glowing in the firelight. "Sorry," I said softly. "I didn't mean to wake you." "You didn't." He stood and crossed the cave, lowering himself onto the furs beside me. "What's wrong?" "I'm scared," I admitted. "Of Marin? Of all of it." I looked at him. "What if I'm not enough, Kale? What if I can't unite the packs? What if—" He reached out and cupped my face in his hands, silencing me. "You are enough," he said firmly. "You have always been enough, and you will always be enough." Tears burned in my eyes. "How do you know?" "Because I feel it," he said, pressing his forehead to mine. "Through the bond, through my soul. You are the strongest person I have ever known, Liora, and I am so proud to stand beside you." A sob escaped me, and I wrapped my arms around him, burying my face in his chest. He held me tightly, his hand stroking my hair, his presence a steady anchor in the storm of my fear. "I love you," I whispered. I felt him go still. Then his arms tightened around me, and his voice, rough and raw and full of emotion, whispered back, "I love you too. The bond is complete, but the greatest challenge is still to come, and it will test everything Liora has become." Leora's POV. The Stormridge pack came at dawn, not to the Elder's Grove, to the village. I was standing in the square, speaking with Elder Cormag about rebuilding the pack structure, when I felt it, a presence, powerful, ancient, dangerous. I turned, and my breath caught. He was standing at the edge of the square, flanked by a dozen warriors, the alpha of Stormridge. He was older than the others, maybe 50, with silver streaking through his dark hair and scars crisscrossing his face and arms. But his eyes, gods, his eyes, were sharp and cold and calculating. This was not a man who bowed easily. Kyle appeared at my side in an instant, his body tense, a low growl rumbling in his chest. The Stormridge Alpha's gaze flicked to him, and something like recognition passed through his eyes. "Kyle," he said, his voice deep. "It's been a long time." "Not long enough, Gregor," Kyle said coldly. Gregor. I filed the name away and stepped forward. Alpha Gregor, I said calmly. I'm honored by your visit. His eyes shifted to me, and I felt the weight of his scrutiny like a physical thing. So you're the Luna, he said slowly. I am. The Mooncaller bloodline, he continued. I thought that line had died out. It nearly did, I said. But the moon goddess had other plans. He studied me for a long moment. Then he said, I knew your grandmother. My heart stuttered. You did? Aye. His expression softened. Just slightly. She was the last true Luna before you. Strong, wise, terrifying when she needed to be. What happened to her? I asked quietly. She was betrayed, Gregor said, his voice hard. By the very packs she'd sworn to protect. They feared her power. So they killed her. Pain lanced through my chest. Who? Does it matter? Gregor asked. They're all dead now, as are their packs. I swallowed hard. Did you have anything to do with her death? No, he said firmly. I tried to save her, but I was too late. He took a step closer, and Kyle moved with him, staying between us. Gregor glanced at him, amused. Still as protective as ever, I see. She is my mate, Kyle said flatly. And if you threaten her, I'm not here to threaten her, Gregor interrupted. I'm here to test her. I frowned. Test me? Yes. He looked at me directly. The Highland packs need a Luna. That much is clear. But we need a Luna who is strong enough to lead, not just by birthright, but by action. What do you want me to do? I asked. I want you to pass judgment, he said. On who? On your father. The square went silent. I felt my blood run cold. What? Your father sealed your wolf, Gregor said. He betrayed his own daughter. He allowed the village to use you as a sacrifice. And now you stand here as Luna, and he kneels at your feet. He gestured to where my father stood at the edge of the crowd, his face pale, his eyes filled with fear. So I ask you, Luna, Gregor continued, what is your judgment? What price does he pay for his crimes? Every eye in the square was on me. I could feel the weight of their expectation, their curiosity, their judgment. Cale's hand found mine, his grip steady. You don't have to do this, he murmured. Yes, I said quietly. I do. I took a slow breath and stepped forward, walking across the square until I stood directly in front of my father. He looked up at me, tears streaming down his face. Liora, he whispered. Please, you sealed my wolf, I said, my voice steady. You stole my birthright. You let them tie me to a tree to die. He nodded, his whole body shaking. I know, and I will never forgive myself. Neither will I said. He flinched. But, I continued, I will not kill you, and I will not cast you out. Shock rippled through the crowd. Gregor raised an eyebrow. And why not? I turned to face him. Because justice is not the same as revenge. My father acted out of fear and grief. He made terrible choices, but he is still my father, and I will not become the kind of Luna who destroys families to prove her power. Then what will you do? Gregor pressed. I looked back at my father. You will serve the pack, not as an elder, not as a leader, but as a healer. You will dedicate the rest of your life to helping those who are broken and afraid, just as I was. My father's eyes widened. Liora, that is my judgment, I said firmly. Do you accept it? He stared at me for a long moment. Then he dropped to his knees and bowed his head. I accept, Luna. I turned back to Gregor. Is that strong enough for you, Alpha? He studied me. Then slowly he smiled. Yes, he said. Yes, it is. He took a knee, his warriors following suit. Stormridge recognizes you, Luna Liora Mooncaller, and we pledge our loyalty to you. Relief flooded through me, and I felt Kale's pride through the bond. Thank you, Alpha Gregor, I said quietly. He rose to his feet. Don't thank me yet. You've got a long road ahead of you, and not everyone will be as forgiving as I am. I know, I said. But, he added, if you continue to lead with wisdom and mercy, you'll have the strongest pack alliance the Highlands has seen in centuries. He nodded once, then turned and walked away, his warriors falling in behind him. The square erupted into murmurs and whispers, but all I could feel was Kale's hand in mine, and the knowledge that I had passed the test. Kale's POV, she was extraordinary. I'd watched her stand before Gregor, one of the most powerful and dangerous alphas in the Highlands, and hold her ground without flinching. I'd watched her face her father and choose mercy over revenge, and I'd felt her strength, her compassion, her wisdom echoing through the bond like a song. She was going to be the greatest Luna the Highlands had ever known, and I was going to spend the rest of my life making sure she knew it. The packs have knelt. The curse is broken. But one final challenge remains. and it will determine the future of the Highland wolves forever. Liora's POV. 6 months later, the Highlands were changing. Under the new pack alliance, the 12 packs had begun working together, sharing resources, resolving disputes peacefully, rebuilding villages that had been abandoned during years of infighting. It wasn't perfect. There were still conflicts, still challenges, but it was better, and it was just the beginning. I stood at the edge of the Elders' Grove, watching the sun rise over the mountains, and felt Kale's presence before I heard him. He wrapped his arms around me from behind, pulling me against his chest, and I leaned into his warmth. "You're up early," he murmured, pressing a kiss to my temple. "Couldn't sleep," I said softly. "Nervous about today?" Today was the winter gathering, the first time all 12 packs would come together under one banner in over a century, and I was the one leading it. "A little," I admitted. "You'll be amazing," Kale said, his voice full of confidence. "You always are." I smiled and turned in his arms, looking up at him. The curse had broken the night I'd accepted the mate bond fully, the night I'd told him I loved him. His beast form had faded, leaving him human once more. He could still shift, but he was no longer trapped between forms. He was free. We both were. "I love you," I said quietly. His silver eyes softened. "I love you too." He leaned down and kissed me, slow and deep and full of promise. When he pulled back, he rested his forehead against mine. "Ready to lead your packs, Luna?" I took a deep breath, then nodded. "Yes, I'm ready." The gathering was held in a massive clearing just beyond the Elders' Grove. Hundreds of wolves had come. Alphas, betas, warriors, healers, families. They stood beneath the open sky, their breath misting in the cold air, their eyes fixed on the stone platform at the center of the clearing. Where I stood, Kale was at my side, his presence a steady anchor, and beside him stood Gregor, Roderick, and the other alphas who had pledged their loyalty. I looked out at the sea of faces, wolves who had once been divided, who had once fought and bled and died over territory and pride, and now they were here, together, because they believed in me. The thought was terrifying and humbling and exhilarating all at once. I stepped forward, and the crowd fell silent. 6 months ago, I said, my voice carrying across the clearing, I was tied to a tree and left to die. I was told I was worthless, cursed, a burden. Murmurs rippled through the crowd. But I survived, I continued. Not because I was strong, not because I was powerful, but because I refused to believe that my worth was defined by what others thought of me. I paused, letting the words settle, and now I stand before you as your Luna, not because I demanded it, not because I forced it, but because you chose me. I looked at the alphas standing beside me. We are stronger together than we have ever been apart. We have proven that, and as long as we continue to choose unity over division, mercy over revenge, and compassion over cruelty, we will build a legacy that will last for generations. The crowd erupted into howls, a sound that echoed across the Highlands like thunder. I felt tears prick my eyes, but I blinked them back. This was just the beginning. Kale's POV. I watched her stand there, my mate, my Luna, my everything, and felt pride swell in my chest so fiercely it was almost painful. She had been broken, and she had rebuilt herself into something unstoppable. When the howling finally faded, she turned to me, her eyes glowing silver in the fading light. "Thank you," she said softly, "for never giving up on me." I reached out and took her hand, lacing my fingers through hers. "I will never give up on you," I said. "Not in this life, not in the next." She smiled, radiant and beautiful and free, and in that moment I knew we had won, not just against the curse, or the betrayal, or the fear, but against everything that had tried to break us, and we would continue to win, together. 3 years later, the Highlands had never been more prosperous. Under Luna Liora's leadership, the 12 packs had formed the Highland Council, a governing body that ensured every pack had a voice, every dispute was resolved fairly, and every wolf was protected. Villages that had been abandoned were rebuilt, trade routes were reopened, alliances were formed with neighboring territories, and at the heart of it all stood Liora and Kale. They lived in the Elders' Grove now, in a home built from stone and wood, and the combined efforts of all 12 packs. It wasn't a castle or a palace, just a simple, sturdy house surrounded by gardens and training grounds, but it was theirs, and it was home. On a cold winter morning, Liora stood in the doorway, watching the snow fall softly over the grove. Kyle came up behind her, wrapping a blanket around her shoulders. "You're going to freeze," he said, his voice warm with affection. "I'm fine," she said, leaning back against him. "Just thinking. About how far we've come," she said quietly. "About how different everything is now." Kyle pressed a kiss to the top of her head. "Are you happy?" She turned to look at him, her silver eyes shining. "Yes," she said. "I am." And she was, because she had found her wolf, she had found her mate, she had found her purpose, and she had built a legacy that would echo through the Highlands for generations to come, not as the girl who was abandoned, but as the Luna who rose from the ashes and changed everything.